Hello, hello, hello. Hi, guys. How are you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you this morning. Oh, let me adjust the camera. Okay, there we go. How are you doing? It's good to be here. Okay. And for those of you that don't know me, and this is your first time seeing me, my name is Trinette Stanford, and I am a nurse practitioner and diabetes health and education specialist. And today's segment is being brought to you by Totally About Diabetes, which is a coaching, education, and support program. Do me a favor, if you can give StreamYard your um, sign in order to give them permission, and then they'll show your names. Okay, this is May. Welcome to May. Welcome to Cinco de Mayo. But also, May is Blood Pressure Awareness Month. So, we are going to talk all things blood pressure today, and then we will be bringing in other other segments. We'll be talking about other segments concerning blood pressure, and also a Stroke Awareness Month. So, those are two issues that are really big in people with diabetes. You would think, okay, you're talking about diabetes, so what does that got to do with blood pressure? Has a lot to do with it. So anyway, um what exactly is blood pressure? A lot of times people, you talk about your blood pressure, you may take blood pressure medicine, but do you really know what blood pressure is? Well, number one, blood pressure is the pressure that's exerted when your heart beats against the arteries. And as you know, it's measured in two numbers. You have the top number, or the first number, which is called the systolic, which is a fancy name for it, but it's the top number. And what that number shows is the pressure that the constriction of the arteries, and the pressure that it takes in order to close the arteries, excuse me, or constrict them. And then they use this cuff, and I did have pictures, but they're not showing up. Then the second picture, I mean, the second number is the diastolic, the bottom number. And that number is when the arteries are relaxed, when all the pressure is released from the artery, and it's totally relaxed, or it's in between the heartbeat. And it really corresponds with the heartbeat. When the heart beats, and that's when the arteries constrict. That's the top number. When it relaxes and the heart fills up, that's the bottom number. So we look at it like 120 over 80 or 140 over 90. That's the way it's read. Now, the thing about blood pressure is it it tells us the exact number that's needed in order to control the arteries. And what the problem lies, if you have to, if the pressure is too high, that means that you have to exert a whole lot of pressure on those arteries in order for it to stop flowing, and in order to restrict. Well, what happens there is that high pressure can cause problems in other parts of the body. And that's when we talk about high blood pressure, that is um, that's hypertension. And what happens with high blood pressure, it can cause problems on other parts of the body. When we take our blood pressure, a lot of times you put the cuff on your arm, or some people have the wrist cuff. I'm not a fan of the wrist cuff. I feel that the arm cuff gives you a more accurate reading. And when I come in later, I will show you the ones that I prefer. But most of them are electronic, and all you have to do is put the cuff on your arm, make sure that it's fit on your arm snug but not too tight, and then you press a button. And then when you press the button and it relaxes, then that gives you your reading, which makes it real easy for you. But the thing is, you want to make sure that you have a cuff that is not, you want to have the right size cuff. if you have a blood pressure cuff that's too small, and like you can just barely get it around your arm, because I have big arms. So I have to have a large cuff in order to use, because if you use a cuff that's too small, it can give you an inaccurate blood pressure. It can cause your blood pressure to read higher than it actually is, because your cuff is too small. Also, if your cuff is too large, it can give you an inaccurate reading, that your blood pressure can be lower than what it actually is. So it's very important that you wear the right size cuff. The other thing is, when you get ready to check your blood pressure, one rule of thumb, and I hadn't thought about this until somebody said it, and I said it's true. Make sure you empty your bladder before you check your blood pressure. Because what happens when you have to go to the bathroom? You're usually holding everything in, and that can cause your blood pressure to be abnormal. It can be elevated, and it's not really true that way. So you want to empty your bladder and make sure your bladder's empty before you check your blood pressure. Another thing, when you check your blood pressure, you want to have both feet on the ground. You don't want to have your legs crossed. You don't want to have your ankles crossed. You want the blood to be flowing smoothly throughout your entire body. So you want to have both feet on the ground. You don't want your legs crossed, and you want to be sitting upright in the chair, preferably with your back against the chair where you're relaxing. And then that way you can get an accurate blood pressure. Now, what happens a lot of times, especially when we go to our office visits, um, what happens, you go in, you rush in, and say like they're running on time. Well, you walk in from the parking lot, you sit down, then they call you back to the back, and the first thing they do is check your blood pressure after you have been moving, and especially if you've had to rush and anything. So your blood pressure can be abnormally elevated because of the fast pace and everything. So what's best to happen, and I know that happened with my husband the last time he went in, because we had to rush in, and then his blood pressure was high when they checked it, and he said, do me a favor, come back later and check it, because my blood pressure never runs that high. Okay. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So you want to make sure that your bladder's empty, and make sure that you haven't been hurrying, you hadn't been rushing. So what you want to do is be able to sit down and take some deep breaths and relax before they check your blood pressure. Okay. And like I said, you want to have both feet on the ground. You want to have your back supported. You want to have you want your arm like below your heart, but it's a shoulder height. So have your arm supported in order for them to check your blood pressure. Now, if you're using a wrist cuff, some of the instructions on the wrist cuff have you put your arm up at your heart level in order to do the reading. And that most of the time is at home with your home readings, because I have not seen a doctor's office that use a wrist cuff. So I said I was going to get back to the readings and everything. You need to be able to check your blood pressure at home. I recommend for people to check their blood pressure at home, because there's something that's called white coat syndrome. And what happens, I have a niece that has it really bad. When she goes to the doctor to get her blood pressure is always like 180 over 100 or 200 over something. But her blood pressure at home is 120 over 70, 120 over 80. But it never fails. When she goes into the doctor's office, that blood pressure shoots up. We call that white coat syndrome. So that's why it's important that you check your blood pressure at home and you write it down. I always recommend writing down your blood pressure along with the time that you take it, because that's very important, especially if you're on medication. Because if you take your medicine first thing in the morning and you check your blood pressure in the morning, then it can be one reading. But if you check your blood pressure in the afternoon or in the evening after you've had your medicine on board for a while, that the effects of the medicine could be decreasing, it could be wearing off. So that's why it's important that um, you check your blood pressure. Um, that you check your blood pressure when you're um, at different times, and write the time down so you can note it. Also, I always advise you to write your blood pressure down, because when you go to the doctor, you take it with you. So then that way they can see how your blood pressure is running at home. So then that way they can compare it with the blood pressure that they're getting in the office. Another thing that you can do is take your blood pressure cuff with you so they can compare the reading that they get from their unit as compared to your um, monitor too. So that's something else you can do. All right. So, like I said, it's Blood Pressure Awareness Month, and today we were going to talk about exactly what is blood pressure, what are we looking at, and some things that we can do in order to check it. And I will post some pictures on different blood pressure cuffs that you can use. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the wrist cuff. It's okay, but the arm cuff is generally more accurate. Also, you want to make sure that you have your feet on the ground, that you're relaxed, take in some deep breaths and relax. And also make sure your bladder's empty before you check your blood pressure. And then that way you get a more accurate reading. So when I come back tomorrow, we'll talk about the different levels of blood pressure, the different stages of blood pressure. Okay. So I want you to come back tomorrow and we can talk about all things blood pressure. In the meantime, you can check out totallyaboutdiabetes.com, which is my website, and we will have different tips and strategies for you, because blood pressure and diabetes do work hand in hand. All right. Thank you for coming in. If you have any comments or questions, do me a favor, place them in the comments and I will respond to you. Everybody have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.